What if everything you were taught about earning respect is wrong? You work harder, you stay humble, you stay polite, yet people still ignore you, use you, or walk over you. From the moment you were young, you were taught a comforting lie, a lie spoken by parents, teachers, and society itself. They told you that if you were kind, patient, and understanding, the world would reward you with respect. They said respect comes to those who give more, tolerate more, and sacrifice more. But reality tells a harsher story, one that Machiavelli understood long before modern morality tried to soften human nature. Look around you carefully. The kindest person in the room is rarely the most respected. They are often the most interrupted, the most delayed, the most overlooked. Kindness, when unguarded by power, does not inspire admiration. It signals availability. It announces to others that there is little cost in crossing you. Human beings, despite centuries of civilization, still respond to the same ancient instincts. We assess strength before we assess virtue. We test limits before we offer loyalty. Respect is not a moral judgment, it is a strategic one. People ask themselves a simple question, often unconsciously: what happens if I ignore this person? If the answer is nothing, respect quietly disappears. Machiavelli observed that men are ungrateful, fickle, liars, and deceivers when it suits them. This is not cynicism, it is observation. When kindness flows endlessly with no boundary, it loses value. What is always available is never treasured. What never withdraws is never feared to lose. Power does not always mean physical force. Power is the ability to say no and mean it. Power is the willingness to walk away without explanation. Power is silence where others beg to be heard. Boundaries are the visible shape of power. They are the lines that tell the world where you end and where consequences begin. A man who forgives everything teaches others to repeat their offenses. A person who accepts disrespect with a smile trains the world to continue it. Not because people are evil, but because people are efficient. They move toward what benefits them and away from what costs them. This is where society becomes dangerously misleading. It praises kindness while punishing boundaries. It celebrates humility while rewarding dominance. It tells you to be patient while elevating those who are decisive and unyielding. And when kindness fails to earn respect, it blames you for not being kind enough. Machiavelli would call this naive. He understood that respect follows authority, not generosity. Even love, he warned, is unreliable when it is not reinforced by fear of loss. A leader who is loved but not feared will be abandoned, a first sign of weakness. A person who is liked but not respected will be used until there is nothing left to take. Boundaries change how others see you. The moment you enforce one, people react not to your words but to your courage. Some will resist, some will be offended. That offense is proof that your boundary was necessary. Respect is rarely comfortable at first because it disrupts existing advantages. Kindness without boundaries creates dependence, not respect. People may say they appreciate you, but appreciation is not power. Appreciation does not stop betrayal. Appreciation does not protect your time, your energy, or your dignity. Only boundaries do that. Notice how respect often arrives after withdrawal. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop overgiving, when you stop chasing approval. Suddenly, the same people who ignored you begin to watch you more closely. Not because you became cruel, but because you became uncertain to them. Uncertainty forces attention. Attention creates respect. Machiavelli did not argue against kindness, he argued against weakness disguised as virtue. He understood that mercy must be controlled, not endless. That generosity must be strategic, not automatic. Otherwise, it becomes a liability. Power announces itself quietly. It does not argue, it does not plead. It simply acts and allows consequences to speak. When people know there is a cost to crossing you, they adjust their behavior without being asked. This is the dangerous truth. The world does not respect those who give the most. It respects those who decide when to give and when to withhold. It respects those who are not easily accessible, not easily manipulated, not endlessly forgiving. The moment you replace blind kindness with deliberate boundaries, the dynamic shifts. Conversations change. Treatment changes, value changes. Not because you demanded respect, but because you demonstrated that your presence is conditional, not guaranteed. There is a silent rule that governs every room you enter, every relationship you maintain, and every hierarchy you stand within. The more desperately you seek respect, the faster it slips from your grasp. Respect senses hunger, it recoils from need. And the moment you ask for it, you announce that you do not possess it. From childhood, many are taught to chase approval. Speak nicely, explain yourself clearly, prove your worth, ask to be valued. But Machiavelli would see this as a dangerous misunderstanding of power. He knew that respect is never requested, it is assumed, enforced, and quietly recognized.
When you ask for respect, you
place yourself beneath the judgment of others. You hand them authority over your value. You signal that your self-worth depends on their permission. This is why people who constantly explain themselves are rarely respected. Explanation implies doubt. Doubt invites evaluation. Evaluation invites dismissal. Observe the figures who command respect without effort. They do not demand it with words. They do not remind others of their importance. Their presence sets expectations before conversation even begins. They move as if respect is the default, not a favor to be granted. Machiavelli understood that perception is more powerful than truth. A prince who behaves as though he must justify his rule appears weak, even if his rule is lawful. In the same way, a person who repeatedly asks to be treated better signals that mistreatment is already acceptable. Seeking respect often disguises itself as politeness. You soften your voice. You tolerate disrespect to avoid conflict. You over-explain your decisions so no one feels offended. But every time you do this, you teach others that your boundaries are negotiable. Respect does not grow in negotiation. It grows in certainty. The need to be respected is often driven by fear. Fear of being disliked. Fear of losing connection. Fear of standing alone. Machiavelli would argue that fear is inevitable, but misdirected fear destroys authority. When you fear others more than they fear losing you, the balance of power collapses. Those who command respect understand something crucial. They do not chase acceptance, they accept the risk of being misunderstood. They allow silence to replace persuasion. They let actions, not arguments, establish their position. Think of how often people say, "All I ask is respect." That sentence alone reveals the problem. Respect that must be requested has already been lost. It is like asking someone not to betray you. The request confirms the possibility of betrayal. Commanding respect does not mean intimidation, it means coherence between words and actions. When you say no once and mean it, people remember. When you follow through on consequences, people adjust. When you stop negotiating your standards, people either rise to meet them or remove themselves. Machiavelli warned that men test authority constantly. They probe for weakness, not out of malice, but out of instinct. When they find it, they exploit it. When they find resistance, they adapt. Seeking respect invites testing. Commanding respect ends the test. There is also a hidden arrogance in seeking respect. It assumes that others will suddenly change their perception because you asked nicely. Machiavelli would call this fantasy. People change behavior when incentives change, not when emotions are expressed. Those who command respect rarely speak about it. They do not announce their self-worth. They protect it. They do not plead their case. They present it. Their confidence does not come from ego but from alignment. They know who they are, what they tolerate, and what they will walk away from. When you stop seeking respect, something unsettling happens. Some people become uncomfortable. They were accustomed to your explanations, your patience, your availability. Your silence feels like resistance. Your withdrawal feels like defiance. This discomfort is not your failure, it is their adjustment. Machiavelli believed that authority must be maintained daily. It is not declared once and secured forever. In the same way, respect is sustained by consistency. One moment of self-betrayal can undo months of strength. One unnecessary explanation can reopen negotiation. Commanding respect requires emotional discipline. It requires you to sit with discomfort instead of rushing to fix it. It requires you to let misunderstandings exist without correcting them. It requires you to accept that not everyone will approve, and that approval is irrelevant to authority. The more you try to convince others of your value, the more you imply it is uncertain. The more you act as though your value is unquestionable, the less explanation is required. Respect follows those who move as if they are not auditioning for it. Machiavelli wrote that men believe what they see. When they see someone who does not beg, does not chase, does not collapse under pressure, they respond instinctively. They may not admire it, but they acknowledge it. and acknowledgement is the foundation of respect. The transition from seeking respect to commanding it is not loud. It happens internally. It begins when you stop asking how to be treated and start deciding what you will accept. It deepens when you realize that silence can be stronger than protest. It solidifies when your actions remove the need for permission. Those who command respect never ask, because asking would contradict the very power that respect responds to. There is a truth so uncomfortable that society prefers to bury it beneath slogans of harmony and emotional safety. Love feels noble. Love sounds virtuous. Love is easy to celebrate. But when relationships become unstable, when pressure enters the room, when loyalty is tested, love is the first thing to fail. Machiavelli understood this long before modern language tried to soften reality. He observed that love is maintained by obligation, and obligation dissolves the moment it becomes inconvenient. Fear, on the other hand, is maintained by self-interest, and self-interest rarely sleeps. This is why fear, when properly controlled, sustains respect longer than love ever can. Most people misunderstand fear. They imagine cruelty, aggression, or tyranny. Machiavelli did not advocate chaos. He spoke of assured fear, the fear of consequence, the fear of loss, the fear of crossing a line that should not be crossed. This kind of fear does not destroy relationships, it stabilizes them. Love relies on emotion. Emotion fluctuates. It fades under stress, temptation, and opportunity. Fear relies on calculation. Calculation endures. When people love you, they may respect you as long as it feels good. When they fear losing you or facing consequences, they respect you even when emotions shift. This is why leaders who rely solely on affection are often betrayed. The moment they appear weak, their supporters reconsider. Love asks, "How do I feel about this person today?" Fear asks, "What happens if I cross them?" One question is unstable, the other is strategic. In personal relationships, this truth is often misunderstood and deeply resisted. People want to believe that being endlessly supportive, forgiving, and emotionally available will secure loyalty. Machiavelli would call this wishful thinking. When forgiveness has no limit, betrayal has no cost. Fear does not mean being hated. In fact, Machiavelli argued that fear and hatred are not the same. Fear is respect anchored in awareness. Hatred is chaos. The mistake many make is confusing boundaries with hostility. When you enforce a consequence, you are not attacking, you are clarifying reality. Consider how quickly people change behavior when consequences appear. A deadline enforced once is remembered forever. A boundary crossed without response invites repetition. Love may ask politely. Fear ensures compliance. In unstable relationships, power shifts constantly. Emotions rise and fall, interests change. What remains consistent is self-preservation. Fear speaks directly to that instinct. When people know there is something to lose, they behave differently. They listen more closely, they calculate their actions. Machiavelli believed that men are loyal when it benefits them and disloyal when it does not. This is not bitterness, it is clarity. Fear aligns loyalty with benefit. Love assumes loyalty will survive inconvenience. History shows otherwise. This does not mean you must threaten or intimidate. True fear is subtle. It exists in reputation, in consistency, in memory. People remember how you responded the last time a line was crossed. They remember whether your words carried weight or dissolved under pressure. Fear creates structure. Structure creates predictability. Predictability creates stability. Love alone creates emotional dependency, which collapses when expectations are not met. Fear, when balanced, creates respect without chaos. There is a reason authority figures who are overly friendly struggle to maintain order. Familiarity dissolves distance. Distance sustains respect. Machiavelli warned that excessive closeness erodes authority because it removes the psychological space where fear operates. In relationships, when you become too accessible, too forgiving, too understanding, you remove the cost of misbehavior. Love without consequence teaches others that nothing is at stake. Fear reminds them that something is always at stake. Modern culture resists this idea because it feels cold. But Machiavelli was not interested in comfort. He was interested in what works, and what works is acknowledging human nature rather than denying it. Fear does not replace love, it stabilizes it. Without fear, love becomes entitlement. Without consequence, affection becomes exploitation. Respect fades not because love disappears, but because boundaries do. When people know you will leave rather than tolerate betrayal, fear enters quietly. When they know access to you is not guaranteed, respect increases. When they understand that crossing you has irreversible effects, behavior changes with confrontation. Machiavelli believed that a wise ruler ensures that fear never turns into hatred. In personal power, the same principle applies. Fear must be impersonal. It must be about actions, not emotions, about standards, not ego. The danger is not fear itself. The danger is uncontrolled mercy. Mercy without limit teaches others that there is no bottom, no final line, no point of no return. Fear creates that point. It marks the edge of respect. In unstable human relationships, emotions fluctuate, loyalty wavers, and promises break. Fear remains because it is tied to outcome. People may stop loving, they rarely stop calculating. Understanding this truth changes how you move through the world. You stop trying to be endlessly liked. You stop over-explaining. You stop absorbing disrespect in the name of peace. You recognize that respect must be anchored to consequence, or it will evaporate under pressure. Fear sustains respect not because people are cruel, but because people are human. Humility is praised as a virtue, but few ever warn you about its shadow. When humility is excessive, when it becomes self-erasure rather than self-awareness, it stops being noble and starts becoming dangerous. Machiavelli understood this distinction clearly. He did not reject humility outright, but he recognized how easily it could be weaponized against those who practice it without restraint. From an early age, many are taught to downplay their strengths. Do not speak too loudly about your achievements. Do not take up too much space. Let others go first. This lesson is framed as character building, but in practice it often trains people to accept less than they deserve. Excessive humility teaches the world that you are comfortable being overlooked. People do not exploit humility because they are villains. They exploit it because humility removes resistance. When you consistently minimize yourself, others step into the space you leave behind. Power abhors a vacuum, and humility that refuses to assert boundaries creates one. Machiavelli observed that men are driven by advantage. They move toward opportunity instinctively. When humility makes you appear non-threatening, non-competitive, and endlessly accommodating, it signals opportunity, not respect. Opportunity. There is a difference between humility and invisibility. True humility is quiet confidence. Excessive humility is self-doubt disguised as virtue. One commands respect, the other invites use. When you constantly defer, apologize, and diminish your presence, people adjust their behavior accordingly. They assign you less value because you assign yourself less first. Admiration is rarely inspired by those who hide their worth. It is inspired by those who know it and carry it without apology. Machiavelli understood that reputation is power. If you weaken your own reputation through constant self-effacement, you make yourself vulnerable to those who are more willing to assert dominance. Excessive humility also confuses fairness with self-sacrifice. You give more than required. You tolerate what should not be tolerated. You stay silent when you should speak. Each act feels small, even virtuous, but together they construct a pattern that others learn to rely on. They come to expect your silence. They assume your compliance. Machiavelli would argue that virtue without strength is not virtue at all. It is liability. When humility prevents you from defending your position, your time, or your dignity, it ceases to be moral. It becomes strategic failure. People rarely exploit those who stand firmly in their value. They exploit those who question it. The moment you hesitate to claim credit, to assert boundaries, or to protect your interests, someone else will do it for you, usually at your expense. There is a subtle cruelty in how society responds to excessive humility. At first, it is praised. You are called kind, easygoing, humble. Over time, that praise fades and expectation replaces it. Your generosity becomes assumed. Your silence becomes standard. When you finally resist, you are seen as difficult rather than dignified. Machiavelli understood that perception hardens quickly. Once people categorize you as submissive, changing that image requires force, not explanation. This is why early assertions of strength matter. Waiting too long allows exploitation to normalize. Humility should never mean surrendering authority over yourself. When it does, it creates imbalance. Those with fewer scruples step forward. They speak louder. They claim more. not because they are more deserving, but because they are less restrained. Excessive humility also weakens negotiation. When you undervalue yourself, others sense it. They push further, they offer less, they test how much you will accept. Machiavelli would say that weakness invites escalation. Each concession encourages another demand. True humility is selective. It knows when to bow and when to stand. Excessive humility bows everywhere. It apologizes for existing. It avoids conflict even when conflict is necessary. It mistakes peace for safety. The danger is not humility itself, but the belief that humility alone will earn protection or respect. History shows the opposite. Those who fail to defend their position are rarely defended by others. Those who refuse to assert themselves are rarely elevated. Machiavelli believed that a ruler must sometimes act against mercy, faith, and humility to preserve power. In personal life, the principle remains. There are moments when restraint must give way to assertion, when silence must give way to presence, when humility must step aside for self-respect. Excessive H. Humility creates predictability. Predictability invites control. When people know you will not resist, they do not fear crossing you. And where there is no fear, there is no respect. Understanding this truth changes how you carry yourself. You stop shrinking. You stop apologizing for boundaries. You stop confusing politeness with submission. You allow humility to exist alongside strength, not in place of it. Exploitation does not begin with cruelty, it begins with permission. Excessive humility grants that permission quietly, repeatedly, and without resistance. Now you see the pattern that was hidden in plain sight. Respect was never about being the nicest, the quietest, or the most accommodating person in the room. It was always about power, boundaries, and consequence. Kindness without strength invited misuse. Seeking respect revealed insecurity. Love without fear dissolved under pressure. Humility without assertion opened the door to exploitation. Machiavelli understood what many still refuse to accept. Human behavior does not change because of good intentions, but because of incentives and limits. Respect survives where boundaries are enforced, where standards are non-negotiable, and where access is not guaranteed. This truth is uncomfortable because it demands responsibility. It asks you to stop waiting for fairness and start creating it. It requires discipline instead of approval, restraint instead of explanation, and self-respect instead of validation. The moment you stop begging to be valued and start deciding what you will tolerate, the balance shifts. People adjust not because you asked them to, but because they must. Respect was never something to earn, it was something to command.